Hello and welcome back to the Villa Filler podcast. It's been a while, but I am here as always with my good friend Dan Wiseman. Dan, how are you doing, man? It's a lot of things have happened since we've last had a chat like this, hasn't there? It's been very busy, not only just in the US, but for Villa as well, mate.
Yeah, there's been so much going on, mate. It's been frustrating because, like, for one reason, usually on my end, I've just come back from sort of bit of a long weekend away after, the long year with work and uni and everything. Like, so I took a few days, and so there's been so much just going on, and it's been that today's the day where I've finally been back, and we can sit down and discuss a whole host of things, of topics. It feels like every day there's just either something new or Villa related or England related. It's like, oh my God, Dan and I need to touch on this. So we've got like a whole catalogue of things that we're going to try and rattle through in our usual sort of 15 to 20-minute length of a podcast. So yeah, mate, I've done, my notes are stacked for this one. I mean, it's going to be interesting to see how I can cram all this into such a short amount of time. But no, it's good to see you, mate. I'm excited to finally get our teeth into this one.
Likewise, man, and I feel like I said for once, not to diminish any of the podcast with them. This is a quintessential Villa filler. We are filling you guys in with everything that has gone on from arguably probably the last 2 weeks. I think with some of this news, as is kind of alluded to in the title, we're probably a bit late on the clickbait for PAPE SARR, but we'll get onto that later, Dan, because we have to start. Football's coming home, isn't it, Dan? It's coming home. England have beaten Croatia. It feels sweet. I believe, did we beat them in the Nations League as well before this?
Yeah.
So we've had the last two games on them since they've knocked us out of the semi-finals, and I think if we'd have recorded this, Dan, right at full time after we've both had the morning on the beers and watching England win at Wembley with fans there, with just the whole occasion, it's probably a completely different podcast. The dust has settled. We've had plenty of time to think about this performance, Dan, in this game. And I don't want to say routine. First of all, the lineup, I think that's the first thing that kind of everyone spoke about to death at this point. So, we will probably just be echoing other people's sentiments. But, I think the whole narrative of Raheem Sterling being man of the match is just totally wrong as well. Listen, I know he scored the goal. He was, according to Who Scored, England's second highest rated player, tied with TRM Mings at 7.2. Had 3 shots. Did a lot of running as well. I did think a lot of his sort of work off the ball was decent. It's what I expect from a Raheem Sterling. But I mean, elephant in the room, Villa filler. No Jack Grealish. It's uninspiring, isn't it, Dan? I mean, let's be real. This is a game England should be winning, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, if we want to take ourselves seriously, mate, this is a Croatia side who are, yes, very good. And I mean, you look at that team for what it is, and there's still so many fantastic players in there, but it's clear to see that they are now on the decline. Do you know, like that they definitely peaked, and they peaked far higher than I think even most would have conceived that they could have when they got to that World Cup final. But they are on the downhill. And look, there's so many nice little partnerships. I mean, the Luka Modric might age, but he still had a fantastic season for Real Madrid. Fantastic season, and that pairing with Marcelo Brozovic in the midfield is, still one of the premier midfield partnerships in the Euros. There's a lot to like about that Croatia side, but there are also a lot of faces who have dropped out. That side missed Ivan Rakitic, who, it was last September, he surprisingly retired from international football, and that's a big miss. You've got players like Subasic and stuff like that who also left the squad. There were a few faces like Rangers' Borna Barisic, who wasn't in the matchday squad as well, which was interesting because he's been nailed on at left back for Croatia. So there's a few different selection dilemmas, either enforced or ones that they took upon themselves, that meant that I wasn't blown away by Croatia. And I think that's something that we have to caveat with this England performance, is that I don't think we got the Croatia that we did in the semi-final a few years ago. It felt like a very flat Croatia performance, and I think they'll certainly be very disappointed with the performance that they put in. But I don't want to be too heavy on the criticism, because I was outraged when I saw Sterling start, but he did the business. He got the goal. I don't think, again, it was a classic Sterling performance, but as soon as he puts the ball in the back of the net, he's proven Gareth Southgate and that decision to be right. And I think that ultimately, It's disappointing given how Jack played in the friendlies, and given that Sterling scored, it means that Sterling's probably going to start the next game as well. But it's one of those where I thought, Calvin Phillips, really? Like Sterling, really? And then at full time, you're suddenly like, well, okay, assist and goal scorer. You can't really say too much about it, I suppose, can you? But no, I mean, from a Villa perspective, mate, you can look at Jack being out, but I think we do need to heap a huge amount of praise, as we always do on this podcast, to Timo Mings.
Mings was colossal, man, and before the game, even in the friendlies, he was, he's already being scapegoated, which is just sort of classic, not only just Villa fan behaviour, but just sort of there's always the need for a scapegoat, and I think we kind of come back to the Austria game, and you see that push that he does inside the box, and as I think people seem to forget, Austria were just kicking lumps out of England for the first 30 minutes, and it's only Tyrone that ever sort of really laid a glove on them, and of course you'd hope he kind of does it in better circumstances, not inside the box, got away with it a little bit maybe, but he wasn't sort of out of order really with the shove, I don't think, and he's proved him and John Stones look like a very good partnership, and I think there's always that air of doubt. I think maybe just because of how Grealish hadn't really been included, the lack of Konsa in there. Would he actually play Mings despite Maguire not being fit? We saw Cody playing the friendlies, and he wasn't necessarily setting the world alight. He can only really play in a 3, not a back 4. But despite knowing all of that, you never really know what to expect with Gareth Southgate, do you? But Mings kind of stepped in. He was absolutely wonderful. He really did Villa proud, I think. It's good to see us, so well represented. I tweeted before the game, Tyrone Mings is an England international defender. You can't take that away from him. And I feel like, I don't know, there's definitely a load of deeper issues we can go into with why people sort of dislike Tyrone Mings down, which we've done to sort of at length on this podcast. So I feel like I would just be repeating myself. But he was fantastic. It's a shame because, if Maguire's fit, he's probably going to get dropped. But saying that, maybe against sort of, the elite opponents, if and when you get further into the competition, it may be a bit more difficult. But, 100% ground duels, 90% pass accuracy from Mings, 72 touches, 4 interceptions, 3 clearances, didn't give away a foul. Stats courtesy of Statman Dave there. Colossal. That's the word that comes with it, man. He looked brilliant. He didn't look phased. Something you've got to consider as well is Trippier obviously playing at left back on the sort of wrong side. That that can easily stitch up your sort of left-sided defender. I think you've seen to talk about Harry Maguire and sort of how good of a sort of season he's had. That's really been down to Luke Shaw's upturn in form. And when you've got a player who's playing well, it's his natural position, and is doing his job well, it makes your job as that sort of left-sided centre-back much easier. So hopefully we see a Chilwell, hopefully we see a Shaw there, just for that bit more of reliability and just a general overall solid player to sort of go in there. But it felt routine. I think today, Dan, obviously watching Czech Republic beat Scotland, that now puts us second in the group, and Scotland weren't as imposing as I felt like they were going to be, Dan. I'm still very worried about playing Scotland. They were sort of static for large portions of the game. They dominated. I think, considering the XG, considering the possession share that they had, I think they had an XG of like 2.05, and obviously they got beat 2-0. It doesn't read well for Scotland. There was a few sort of weird decisions though, Dan, with Che Adams missing out, with Kieran Tierney being on the bench. It was certainly not Scotland's strongest squad, and maybe they did have that England game in mind. But in terms of qualifying things, I'm certainly feeling a lot more confident than I did before that Croatia game, Dan. I don't know about you.
Yeah, again, mate, I think we have to talk lineups. Is that there's so much evident quality on that Scotland bench, and that's what surprises me. I mean, why Lyndon Dykes over Che Adams? There were just little key selection issues that I just don't understand. I mean, I know that there is a huge amount of issues that relate to this topic, and getting the two clubs to integrate into one team is difficult. But Rangers have just cleared the league out completely in Scotland, unbeaten. Their record has just been immense, but no Rangers players started for Scotland today. There are like, and just little things like that you sort of look at, and look, I know that it's difficult to get two sides like Rangers and Celtic to come together under one roof and play. It's probably the only national team in the world where you have such an issue, because there are other derbies, but it's not like your best players are almost, half of your squad comes from within those two squads. Like, yeah, you can look at El Clásicos, Super Clásicos, and stuff like that, but the old firm and the issues that go on there, having to integrate those two players into a team is difficult. And so, yeah, it's again a lineup problem for Scotland there, but they were hugely disappointing, mate. And you felt that if they were to do anything in this Euros, it had to start today, because that's the most winnable game in the group. And it's difficult, it's a difficult game. Czech Republic are a very good side, and it's looking like they're starting to bring back some of the talents that befitted them in the early 2000s. When you think of Czech, Rosicky, Barros, and those kind of teams, it's looking like with the players that they've now got. I mean, Patrick Schick is a great player. You've obviously got the West Ham duo of Kufal and Souček, and there's a lot to like about that Czech Republic team. And so it's no mean feat to be beaten by them, but you did feel, especially at Hampden, that Scotland had to go out there and do something today. But again, mate, they had the chances to do it. I mean, you look at the XG, Scotland could have scored and should have scored by that metric about 3 goals compared to, Czech Republic. I don't think they would have mustered one, maybe, given the 2 chances that Schick scored, because both were exceptional in their own right, especially the second one. But yeah, again, Scotland, mate, they feel like they've got a good team, good players in every position, but they are lacking that goal scorer, which I think if they had today, I think they would have got the points.
And, it comes down to, it's as simple as you play Che Adams and you don't. I think he's a fantastic player. To be fair, Scotland and Wales, probably between them, could probably put together a 26-man English squad, couldn't they? Given some of the inclusions in both of their squads. But, these kind of decisions, Steve Clarke will hope that they don't, it doesn't come back to bite them. I think it puts a lot of unnecessary pressure onto what is already going to be arguably one of the biggest games of the group stage, which is Scotland-England. Sort of the first time in years that, since '96 that we've met at an international tournament and played against Scotland. So there's a lot riding on that. I think this Scotland side are, certainly better than that side from '96. Not that, of course, we were alive to witness that, Dan. But there's a lot of talent within this Scottish side. Some similarities there, Dan, with Spain not calling up any Madrid players to their squad, which is crazy when you look at the seasons that the likes of Marco Asensio, even Sergio Ramos, players like that have had. Tournament football's a weird one, isn't it? Because you don't have another 37 games to rectify this. It's about here and now, and I guess that kind of does reflect. We're saying, Sterling's going to start against Scotland. I feel like, given the nature of the game, Scotland are going to be, they're going to have to defend for large portions of the game, pick their counter attacks wisely, and I think that will lend itself to seeing Foden and Grealish play. You're going to need players who can unlock defences. Because there isn't going to be that spacing behind to exploit, which is ultimately what Sterling's in the side for. So hopefully we'll see Jack, but it's hard to imagine Raheem Sterling not starting again, at least given the fact he got his goal. It almost feels as well, we spoke about this sort of pettiness before, Dan, and about the sort of arrogance of Southgate and sort of how he refused to call up Grealish, and then when he's called up, he's reluctant to use him, despite dropping man of the match performances for England, stuff like that. It kind of feels like he's been vindicated in his decision to not play him, because he could have brought him on. He chose to bring Rashford on. He chose to bring Calvert-Lewin on for 2 minutes as well. Southgate, I think, he was trying to prove a point that I think, the nation has kind of pinned our Euros hopes on Jack Grealish. And, let's not get it twisted, Dan. If we face a Germany, a France, a Portugal later on in the competition, Jack Grealish is the difference between winning and losing that game. This is only Croatia. I caveat that because they're an aging side, but hopefully we do see Jack feature in the tournament. It's good to see all the sort of behind the scenes stuff as well. The diary room thing that England put out with Jack, just talking about his camp. You can just see how happy he is to be there, and he spoke very openly about his experience there, how much higher the level is than it is at Villa, which is obviously understandable when you've got England's elite there. There's loads of sort of exciting things coming out of this tournament, Dan. All we just need is a Grealish goal, don't we, for England? That would be the icing on the cake. But yeah, that Scotland game is going to be huge. We may do, a dedicated preview to that close to the time. It depends. But I think that'll probably do it for now, Dan, because, again, we have transfer news to talk about, because you and I haven't spoke about Buendia together, Dan, have we? Now it's official. We've had the first interview. Buendia is a Villa player, 80 grand a week. He's on 15 grand a week at Norwich. I can't believe that. And even that, just it kind of shows how far we've come, in terms of the sort of wage restructure. Really just show that Villa can finally flex their financial muscles, Dan. It's a big signing, isn't it, mate? I know we've spoke about him in so many podcasts before, just in terms of linking, and in terms of just, even before there was links, just sort of expressing how much, I know you specifically, Dan, really wanted this play to happen. It's so exciting, isn't it, Dan? He's unfortunately, he's withdrawn from the Argentina squad, didn't make the final selection for the Copa America, but that seems to be fairly routine with how Argentina, sort of pick their squads. Emi was in that first sort of preliminary squad, got caught, second time round, came back in. So, looking at the next international break, we'll have, an Argentinian Villa player, in the National League squad if all goes well, Dan.
Mate, it's an unbelievable signing. If I'm being honest with you, I recorded those episodes, and sometimes, mate, it's not like we're not honest with this. Sometimes you and I come on here and we record a transfer room about a player and we go, I don't really think this will happen. This feels a bit too good to be true. I think, and we were very open with that. We still like to give you guys the lowdown and sort of give you guys how they'll fit, but part of offering our opinion on the signing is whether we think it will or not. It will happen, which is a big deal. And I've got to be honest, I was recording these episodes about Emi and I was like, oh my God, he would be so unreal. But it's just too good to be true. Like, this guy's a baller. Like, Arsenal were interested in him at the same time. And it's like, whilst we sort of see as Villa fans the differences in those two projects, and I'm sure Arsenal fans do. Arsenal fans will still always, and Arsenal as a club will still always have the appeal of it being Arsenal. They're an absolutely huge club, one of the greats of English football, and so players will always be drawn to go and play there. And so it's like, I was recording these, I was like, oh man, I don't think we'll get him. But it's like, seeing him that become official, and you're like, oh my God. And you see him, like, Arsenal was apparently never taken up too much of his mind. He was always set on the Villa. Just makes it that little bit sweeter. And I think you talk about that, we're not going to give a rundown of the stats and stuff, because your video yourself, mate, when it was announced, and then the transfer mill that we did that. But when you talk about him being on 15 grand a week, I only can take that as a positive thing, because there was never any complaints about that. You never heard him push for a new contract or push for more money, or use that in leverage to try and get a deal out of Norwich when they were relegated. This is a guy that just loves ball, and that I like hugely, mate. You can see it in the way that he plays, in the way that the fans adore him. This is a guy that's out there just trying to make a name for himself, just trying to get out there, do his most, play his best football. And I think when you take him out of that Norwich side, with no disrespect, and put him into this Villa side around players who are going to finish more of his chances and give him more chances to get on the score sheet himself, it's just going to take him up to another level, mate. And I for one, I'm just so excited to see what this guy can do in a current and blue shirt.
It is really a pinch me moment, and I think we are going to look back at this as being a sort of a watershed moment in the club's history. It's a £40 million signing, record transfer fee. Something that I can still see is within the next few years all going well. We shatter, 2 or 3 more times, maybe even in this window. Another Argentinian who isn't linked, Dan, but, someone who is certainly a player who, again, we've discussed at length on this channel, just as a demand, as a pipe dream signing. Rodrigo de Paul was linked with a €40 million move to Atletico Madrid. And if that kind of player is available for that kind of fee, Dan, let's be, because we've shown we can now compete in that kind of market. It could happen. I mean, there's no links, guys. This is just merely to entertain our entertain our desires, Dan. But on Buendia, you look at Watkins, fantastic season, really amazing, 14 goals. Actually had an expected goals of 16. We know he's robbed of at least 3 goals by VAR and whatnot, but you add that extra bit of creativity in behind him. Watkins is a 25 goal a season striker next season, mark my words. But Dan, now onto a player that Villa are actually linked with. It went pretty mental last week regarding this guy, and there was a lot of stuff flying about him allegedly liking pictures, allegedly following players. Never saw any of that. unless he's deleted them, unless he's unfollowed. I don't know whether this is his fans just, doing some photoshops, because we've seen a lot of these sort of fake edits of Buendia replying to DMs of people before he even signed on Instagram, which of course was a load of nonsense. But PAPE SARR, Dan, this one's exciting, and we can't claim to be experts on this guy. Well, I think we can now, because we've had about a week to research him, Dan. But at the time, it feels like we're doing this at the right time. We're not as shamelessly sort of jumping on the clickbait as we like to do with these transfer rumor mills. But we're here to give you the lowdown on this guy. It's hard to. We're talking about players who were born, 2 or 3 years after we were born, Dan. 3 or 4 years. That's mental. This guy's only 18 years old. He's played 22 games in League 1 this season for Metz, and he really does look like the kind of signing that can potentially elevate Villa to the next level. Now, when I think we've kind of addressed this before in terms of the sort of need for a DM. I think whilst Marvis Lakamba's had a fantastic end to his season, and whenever he's been called upon, he's proven his worth. I don't think you can argue that you need more backup there, because Douglas, I think, has kind of proven he isn't going to be a 6. He isn't going to be that kind of midfielder that protects the back 4 anymore, because I don't think we can rely on him just yet to do that consistently. So getting in a proper sort of number 6 to shield the back 4 is probably on the agenda for Aston Villa, and this guy does it so well. And it's frightening that he's playing this much at his age, and he's standing out. He's making 20 pressures on average per 90. He's averaging 2.77 tackles, Dan, 1.36 blocks, 2.31 interceptions, which puts him in the top 2 percentile of midfielders in the whole world over the past year for doing so. That's what Villa need, Dan. That because I think we sometimes get lost. We need a winger, we need a striker, we need this, we need that for backup. Ultimately, Villa have to stop conceding goals. We've proven that we can score as many. We've proven that we can create chances. You add Buendia to that mix, that elevates that even more. So the back 4 has been outstanding for let's say 3/4 of the season. And they've only been let down by the midfield. They've not been let down by themselves. They've not been let down by the goalkeeper. They've been let down by the midfield, Dan. And Sarr is the kind of player that, given time, we can't act as if he's going to come in and do wonders, because Douglas Luiz didn't, Nakamba didn't straight away either, didn't set the world alight. And at 18 years old, that is a lot to be asking of a player. But this guy, I mean, if you can get this guy in, Dan, that's 2 or 3 years, the sky's the limit, man.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. And I think the one thing that I like most about this player in particular is, he's 18 years old and he's been doing fantastic things for Metz, but he's 6 foot tall, which is an element in our midfield which I think we really lack. And we need some height and some physicality just to add something that, look, I think one player that needs to really be put in the conversation for next season is Marvelous Nakamba, without doubt. Because I think this season, whenever he was called upon, he's done fantastic. And whilst we definitely need to sign players to elevate the squad, you can't ignore those who are already performing. And I think Marv definitely deserves an increased role. But for all the fantastic performances Marv can put in, sometimes that little bit of height and physicality that you can add to a midfield is really just unrivaled. I mean, he's so light and delicate on his feet with that height. He's very good in the air. Very, you mentioned how well he can break up play and get stuck in. He's got superb passing range, and a really nice right foot. Left's not too bad either, but you're sort of talking here whereby he sort of pipped in France as the sort of ideal man to pivot with Camavinga, and that's the kind of breadth that we're talking about here, because Camavinga is, without doubt, one of the most exciting midfield prospects in the world, and they're the kids that are going to take the baton for this current French team and carry on running with it, given the success that they have. They have a hugely exciting amount of youth products coming through that are expected to pick up that baton. As I was saying, the guys that have sort of phased out in recent years, and Sarr is very much picked to be a part of that project. And so I think, whilst it's a lot for an 18-year-old to handle, is that move to the Premier League on their own. If you have Gilbert in the frame and those French speakers who have played in the league and can sort of take him under their wing, then I think it makes it seem a little bit more reasonable. But the rumor tip that we were the most enterprising club, which is an interesting bit of transfer talk, isn't it? Because what does that actually mean? And so it's a little bit pie in the sky at the moment. But at the end of the day, mate, when you've got Rob McKenzie, who plucks the likes of N'Golo Kante out of the French divisions, Riyad Mahrez as well, who's so good at finding diamonds in the rough within that league, you can't help but, again, get excited, mate.
I mean, you just got to look at some of the players who've come, even looking at the likes of Bertie, who's come. You look at Leicester picking out Fofana, Arsenal with Saliba, obviously sort of other circumstances have affected his time at the club so far, and videos of a certain person's penis, I think, as well, certainly haven't helped any situation with Saliba. But the French league is a very exciting league to kind of pluck young prospects from. And what also excites me about this, this particular player as well, Dan, is sort of going forward, because I think he definitely is this, he comes to English football, he is a 6, 100%. We've seen him kind of flirt between that and being that of a number 8 in that sort of, midfield Metzala role. And that shows in the stats. His pass completion is very high, 85.6%. He's attempting 52 passes per game, so that really shows he's the kind of linchpin in that middle. He's receiving the ball a lot. He's very progressive in his play. He's as well another facet. Just because you guys know how much I love my XG, has an XG bang on of 1, and he scored 3 goals, which is really exciting, because I think that's something, again, you look at Douglas Luiz, scored all them screamers in his first season. You want him to add more goals to his game. Obviously, it's not his job, it's not really his responsibility, but you do kind of like to see them kind of players get involved, especially in the fashion that Luiz has scored all of his goals. And FBref as well have him sort of compared to the likes of Declan Rice, Timo Bakayoko, who, again, he's no joke, man. I've seen this before he came to Chelsea, and Chelsea kind of ruined him. I had the pleasure, the privilege of seeing him play for Monaco. Fantastic midfielder, he really is. I will die on the hill that Bakayoko is a solid midfielder, and he's having a good time over at Napoli. He's had a spell at AC Milan as well. Didn't quite work out in the Premier League, but he's a very solid number 6 in terms of shielding the defence. There aren't too many that are better than him, in my opinion. This is a sign I think we can be very excited about, whether, again, there's the much truth in him following Grealish and liking and unliking picks and all that kind of stuff. That is left to be seen. But I think, again, does it kind of beg the question, Dan, to talk about Ward-Prowse, a player we spoke about last week? Is Ward-Prowse, the smoke screen to kind of bring in these kind of players, to kind of, see if you can lowball some of these clubs? Because, of course, we're in a position where we can pay big money, Dan, but, you don't want to be splashing too much money if it's not necessary. They'll look at the sort of 40 million price tag at least that Southampton are demanding for Ward-Prowse, and certainly look to get better value from elsewhere, won't they, Dan? I think that is I think it's good to see that we're linked with a Ward-Prowse, but again, something that I think we did touch on, Dan, to be fair, in that transfer rumour mill. We can't just sit here and go, oh yeah, Ward-Prowse, he'll come to Villa. We've got this exciting project. We've got this, we've got that. We've quite literally spent the past 4 years telling the big 6 to fuck off when it comes to Jack Grealish. It's the exact same situation. So I feel like some Villa fan, I'm not calling anyone out specifically, but there has been, this kind of arrogance in, he'll come. I think someone did correct us in the comments and tell us he was a Portsmouth fan, but even so, came through the academy. He's been there for so long. He owes his career to Southampton, and being club captain, we can't be blind to that kind of stuff, can we, Dan?
No, absolutely, mate. It is one of those whereby it was clear when Christian came in. I mean, I think he actually outlined it in an interview what the profile would be for the kind of players that Villa would want to sign. It's these young, hungry players with low-ish transfer fees with high resale value. And that's the market that, on the whole, the club have tried to follow in doing their business in, pretty much since their arrival. And I think whilst Ward-Prowse fits a lot of, he's still got his best years ahead of him, 100%. I don't think in, sort of 3 or 4 years, you're going to sell him for profit. Not a massive one anyway, especially if you're buying him at a big price, which, Southampton are going to demand. That's sort of, you're talking 40 odd million there for them to part ways. I mean, in 3 or 4 years? Are we going to go and flip James Ward-Prowse for 60, 70? Like, probably not. It's one of those whereby Southampton are going to want a huge bit of money to part ways with him. And it's the same that Leeds are saying now with Calvin Phillips. It's the same that Southampton are saying with James Ward-Prowse. It's the same that we're saying with Jack Grealish. It's that I think in recent years, perhaps I think with Spurs and with Arsenal, we've seen that playing for, with United for a fair proportion of that time, is that playing for a big six club isn't always what it's cut out to be, especially with, that sort of Super League. It's called their ethics into question and stuff like that. And I think you look at so many of the other squads that are proving, like Leicester, have really paved the way to show that you don't have to be one of these big fish to go make waves in the top four or in Europe. As they're doing in the Europa League. You can do it as long as the recruitment is right and you have a vision. And I think Villa matched that pathway. And, if you ask me, personally, would Jack Grealish go and rather challenge for Europe with Villa or with Arsenal? The answer is obvious. And so it's the same with James Ward-Prowse. I'm sure Southampton have something that they're trying to unravel. It's clear to see that they have their own academy and their own profile of signed very talented young players, as do we. So, James Ward-Prowse might not be happening, but Sarr does fit that bill that I was talking about in terms of the profile that we like to sign players within. And so, whilst we haven't heard anything more since those rumours came out about a week ago, I think it was the 7th and the 8th that those started to come out of France, that we were being this enterprising club. It's one to keep an eye on, because it's certainly, I wouldn't rule out Villa having an interest, to say the least.
100%, man. Yeah, again, it is that kind of profile. Villa are going to be looking for, if you can make, you can have him at your club for 3 or 4 years, flip him for a profit. In that time, James Ward-Prowse is 29. So as you said, Dan, it doesn't, whilst it kind of fits the sort of calibre of players that, of course, Villa want to capture to kind of elevate them to the next level, it's some place off fitting into the transfer strategy we're seeing. But, I do think there is going to be one signing, of this kind of profile, which, you're looking around the sort of £30 million mark. And then, I feel like it may be some sort of wheeling and dealing, using the money wisely, improving players' contracts. As of now, Douglas Luiz is still at Aston Villa. We don't really know if Manchester City have activated the buyout clause, because it's kind of happened before. I think, if you look at the El Ghazi deal, the deal was up before the playoff final and didn't get announced till like a week later that we'd signed him. So, fingers crossed, Doug isn't going anywhere. It doesn't seem like he, given his second half of the season form, that he particularly fits in at Manchester City. In any case, but we've kind of seen off that, so I think it's fair to say he's in. You can probably get him on an improved deal. I would say he's probably deserving of it. I think next season will be a big season for him. And if, we've got Sanson to come back down as well. So we've got a nice little French contingency looking to sort of make an appearance for the Villa, which is very nice. And, I think that's probably a good note to end the podcast on, Dan. We've covered a lot here for you guys. England play on Friday. I'm sure there'll be another Transfer Room podcast, come preview for you guys to check that out. And, we've got you covered in terms of Euros content, in terms of Villa transfer content. Your support recently has been, just out of this world. It would mean the most if you guys would subscribe if you haven't already. Hit a like on the video, comment your thoughts below on the sign-ins, and just keep engaging with us, keep growing. That's what we're trying to do. This community is going places, man. And also, I think we need a Manscaped partnership, because all the other Villa podcasts have got one, Dan. I mean, I know, it's fairly useless for me. I ain't got, but Dan, he's got his beard going on Manscaped. If you guys are listening,
there's room for it. Yeah, definitely.
I can more than endorse, other hairy parts of the body. I can vouch for that. That's fine. I can promote your products there. So yeah, shout out to all the Villa accounts that I've got there. I know Up the Villa podcast have, Luke's done an amazing job. I think their podcast is a year old now. 7500 to Holte as well. Everyone's killing it at the moment, Dan. It's good to see.
Absolutely.
But we're out here, we're trying to thrive. We're trying to, keep ahead of the competition. So, if any sponsorships, Gymshark, come on, man. We need Ben on the podcast. I've said this. I'm just going to keep wearing this until he comes on the podcast. We need to get that sponsorship. Imagine, Dan, we become Gymshark sponsored athletes. Us two.
I can see it. We've got the physiques, mate.
It's going to happen. It's going to happen.
Euro summer, definitely.
Absolutely, man. So yeah, if you guys enjoyed this podcast, hit a like, comment your thoughts down below, and subscribe for more content. Up the Villa.